two badges, they're coming to your town. It's two badges, they're gonna show you around. It's two badges, they're coming to your town. It's two badges.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Forum Friday, Co-optional Edition.
True!
With you.
With you.
Last week, we asked you all, what do you think about the current state of representation of minorities, genders, what have you, in major video games?
Minority. That is also female. It's not a mathematical term, it is a sociological term. It means that a group, not just that numbers are in minority or any of that bullshit, but just that the group has less power in a social structure.
Our first comment comes from Ultimate Brayloom. AAA games will do what sells, and that's white males. But Assassin's Creed has fairly good racial diversity. I don't think gender would go well with there being in the past. Women had next to no rights, blah, 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 blah. Hang on, what? I think that it is actually very fair that the characters that are women outside the animus have some very important roles in the world. I'm confused. Okay. We're actually gonna, with this one, we're kind of gonna respond to everything, post comments just to keep it all on the same points. So Mr. Rospiden, who commented on the last video, the minority side of things doesn't really bother me, although a proper movie game for Django Unchained would make an awesome Old West shooter. Look at a lot of the areas the games today take place in. The majority of areas are dominated by white males. Maybe we need to change locales. The misrepresentation in females, or of females in games, though. This is something the industry needs to break fast. I'm looking at you, Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. Vespertine says, I definitely like it when games add female protagonists or an option for a female protagonist, just like I appreciate when a game can get a black male-female character in a game without making them stereotypical. I'm a strong black woman and I don't need no man characters. On the same note, I hate when games force characters for a different cultural background, race, or whatever you see people of a different color or birthplace to be. I don't need any game to be culturally diverse if it isn't organic in the storyline, if they have one at all. Just like when Tomb Raider, a game I still thoroughly enjoyed, added Russian antagonists that couldn't even speak their own language fluently. I can only speak for Russian-speaking antagonists because I can understand them. I'm not very well at times in Tomb Raider. But I'm sure there are plenty of other games that have forced other language-speaking antagonists to spice up an enemy or spark some more prejudice in our fellow entitled US of Anians. To conclude this already long comment, I like cultural diversity, but if a game is going to force a group of murderous men that in every text say Viktor, Vladimir, Sergei speaking Russian that can barely do so, I'd rather have generic American antagonists at that point. Yeah, that was bad. There has been some Con Movie Maker says, there has been some major female characters recently in some great games. The first that comes to mind is Ellie from The Last of Us, Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, which was a great game from 2013 as well, but she is much more sexualized. I also like a lot of the ethnicities of characters that are based on the region of story they fit into, rather than, oh, we need a main character, so he is white and male.
One thing that I'm kind of confused by, I don't want to be really antagonistic here. I don't want to be like crazy man-hating feminist or any of that bullshit. Like, I'm pretty reasonable in terms of feminist views, and especially with my games. I mean, let's see, one of my favorite games to play is Team Fortress 2, and while I recognize that there are no playable female characters, I still play the game because I enjoy it. I don't allow my criticisms of a game to make me hate a game, and a lot of people seem to misunderstand that. I think it's necessary to be critical of a game on all levels, whether it's game mechanics, whether it's characters, whether it is representation. You need to be critical of a game because that makes it better. It doesn't mean that you're hating on it.
As far as I totally agree with all that, by the way.
Yeah.
But as far as addressing, I think, the comments and concerns, I kind of want to divide, like, put a little context and divide games into kind of two categories for me. And that's basically going to be multiplayer and single player, but at the same time, not so much. Like, take a game, like, just imagine your own generic shoot 'em up game, and yes, I'm going to go with shooters here, but just, you know, your generic game where there's not necessarily a whole lot of significant story. Like, I'm thinking about just, like, not Duke Nukem specifically, but a game like Doom or, you know, something like that nowadays that comes out where, while sure the character is there, it's not really significant to the shooting experience. Or multiplayer games like TF2, Call of Duty, Titanfall, Battlefield, things like that. In those games, what your character is as far as gender, minority, anything like that, frankly doesn't matter because you never see them and it doesn't affect anything. At the same time, I also feel like that also means that there's really no excuse for not giving those options. And so, talking about the multiplayer side of things, in which case we're also including Assassin's Creed Unity in here, since that's the co-op 4-player multiplayer where there's no reason not to. There's no reason not to, other than laziness of not wanting to customize things. Like, if you're just given a generic character and told to go kill some stuff, no reason you can't customize that and make it something you identify more with or you want to customize. And so, that's something that I liked about what's it called? Sunset Overdrive and their response to the Assassin's Creed deal, where they basically said you can customize your character however you want and there's all these options. That's kind of what we're moving to. A lot of people were talking about how that's too PC, but that's just, if you're given a generic character, you should be able to customize it however you want. What gender, race, clothes you wear does not affect the gameplay, so you should be able to change that to fit you.
The really tricky thing about representation in any form of media, whether it's games or movies or any of that, is that people who are already represented, and I'm talking to you white males, not hating on you, but you have lots of representation in games, you're not really going to notice when other groups don't have representation, and you're really not going to be able to totally empathize with them whenever they talk about how it's important to them.
Since white males are basically the default in a game.
Well, let's face it, people in our society in general, people consider white male to be the default.
Right. And so, I think the only way they would notice is if there was a game that you just couldn't make a white male, and then they're probably going to hate on it and be like, what the hell, I can't make myself in this game, what's the problem? There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And now I kind of want to make a game where that's actually the whole point, is to see how many people get stuck at character creation. There's a bug, there's no white men in here. I can't play the game.
Especially white men with scruff.
Oh yeah, and dark hair, and muscles, and undersized t-shirts.
Why can't I make my lanky white male?
Oh.
And I mean, I have no problem with being able to make white men in games or having white male protagonists or any of that. It's just that I would like to be able to make female characters as well.
Right.
That appeals to me.
The other category of games that I mentioned was story-based games, and Vespatine brought up Tomb Raider, and obviously the big one here is Assassin's Creed, and another thing from E3 was Uncharted, and I totally get it.
Okay. I mean, it's not like there have ever been any female assassins, and it's not like there have ever been any female assassins in France, and especially like revolutionary. I mean, come on, guys. Charlotte Corday, I mean, who was she? She wasn't anyone. She didn't do anything except, she was a female assassin in France in a suitable time period to the Assassin's Creed game in question here, but, whatever. Females, yeah, they've never done anything.
And see, the funny thing is while a lot of the story in the historical aspect of Assassin's Creed stays true and untouched, and so that's an argument for certain things. Like, there was a strong argument someone I talked to made about not having a whole lot of specifically, like, racial differences as far as like black people running around because they were slaves, and that would be a huge freaking deal, and that wouldn't make any sense. Sure, fine. That could still be argued because it's a fantasy game, and people are going to argue, okay, well, we can have white males because it's fantasy, then you can have a black one because it's fantasy.
What?
Because there wasn't a time machine where you go back and assassinate people in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance and in the American Revolution. No.
I just think it's funny that people say that the inclusion of minority races or even minority sexualities or gender identities ruins the fantasy aspect of a game.
Right.
Because essentially you're saying my fantasy world
doesn't
is
have them.
full of white men who are heterosexual and bang a bunch of highly sexualized white women.
Right.
Or maybe exotic women, if, you know, you're in one of those places.
And as far as the comments that mentioned that women had basically no rights and stuff, they were still they weren't actually slaves though. Like there's a huge difference. They still, as Chu mentioned, they still ran around and killed people. They still did things. They may not have had the right to vote, but they still lived and had lives and could have easily been major characters of stories. And in the case of, okay, so since this seems to focus around Assassin's Creed, the main issue is the 4-player co-op of Assassin's Creed, where they refuse to give you the option to play as a female.
Or anyone who isn't white.
Okay, let's see here. Your options for characters are the main character in another robe, the main character in another robe, or the main character in, another robe. So it's completely logical that you play as 4 clones of yourself, all where the entire world thinks you're that guy, and not just a woman version of yourself? I mean, to me, having breasts isn't different than having a purple robe. I don't see the big deal when it's co-op, and the game isn't scripted for co-op anyway, as they pointed out, so why not?
It reminds me of the Doctor Who arguments that I saw a lot whenever the new season was... I don't follow Doctor Who, I don't know the details, but you know, people were like, it'd be awesome to have someone who isn't a white male as the Doctor, because he gets regenerated or whatever, and people were like, no, that's the story, that's what's necessary here, that's who he's always been. But if he gets essentially reincarnated, why does it matter? And people try to, on one hand, make the argument, oh, it doesn't matter, it's the same anyway, like everyone can identify with the same character. But then on the other, they try to say that it's just part of the story, that's just how it is, and we can't change it.
Right. And then, I'm sorry, but I completely face-palmed at the couple comments that said the characters are white men because those are the prominent people in those areas. What are you talking? Sure, maybe, and again, I touched on this, maybe in Renaissance Italy, or maybe even slightly in the American Revolution, but games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider that come into the picture, you know, modern games, they're American characters. You know how many other shades of color Americans are other than white? So, because...
Aren't we essentially in the minority at this point?
Probably, yeah, actually. But, like, okay, so... most games take American or British characters and throw them into some random or completely made-up environment. And I'm gonna think of Far Cry for this, too. So, you have Uncharted, where you travel to all sorts of, you know, tombs and remote locations in Egypt, which is in Africa, and stuff, but you're American characters, and I think one of the guy has like some Italian influence or whatever, but no reason you can't be black or Mexican or Hawaiian or Asian or anything. Tomb Raider, obviously Lara Croft, sure, she's her own character, and there was a bit of diversity in the other characters, but again, the Russian accents, like that was the worst Russian characters I've ever heard of. And even the Hawaiian dude, or he's either supposed to be Hawaiian or I forgot the other type. There's a football player who's Somalian or something, like he might have been that, but it was just so cliche and generic, and he's a guy from Rocket Power, like, love the ocean dudes. It's like, no, that was terrible. And sure, they had a black lady, but the black lady was actually in love with the white dude, so that, I guess, was impressive for a video game, but...
I mean, it comes down to this. It's a simple concept. Representation doesn't count if it's mostly sexist or racist or homophobic or whatever. you know, prejudiced against the group that it's trying to represent. That's all there is to it.
And I'm not gonna pick on Tomb Raider specifically too much because it's quite possible they just got bad voice actors and they were stuck with it for the Russians specifically, or it was
Only
just
the
bad writing.
Russians.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I mean, if you have a guy who's supposed to be good at Russian accents and that's all you can hire, whatever. Like, a million reasons could have gone into that. And they did have some slight. They attempted diversity. Like, it wasn't outright, like, trying to be racist, I don't think. And the fact that I'm 99% sure Laura was gay in the new reboot, I guess that works. But all the other games, E3, white dude, white dude, white dude, white dude, what? Why? I'm a white guy, and I'm not gonna change my mind about playing a game if there's a black man character or anything else. Why? I have to ask. Why is it impossible for people to write stories about people who aren't white?
And I think it's just so important, especially when you play RPGs, which I am a huge fan of. That's what I spend most of my time playing. It's so important to be able to see yourself in the characters or in the universe. And I think people, as I was saying before, people who are already represented, they kind of take that for granted almost, and they don't realize exactly how important that is. Because if you talk to someone who is in a minority group and ask them about how they feel about being represented in this certain form of media, then they're going to tell you, that was awesome. I'm so glad I got to be portrayed here in a way that wasn't sexist or racist or anything like that. And I think those are really the opinions that matter most here, because they're the ones who need the representation.
Right.
We already have it.
And the issue comes up of all the white people, and we got a couple comments like that basically said, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care because you already have it. Other people do care. If you don't care, there's no reason they can't have it. If you don't care, it doesn't, you do not care if they get it, so there's them getting it doesn't hurt you.
Well, I think some of our comments were more so saying, oh, I don't care, they can do it either way, and basically what you were saying.
That's what I mean, though.
Okay.
That's what I mean. They're saying they don't care either way, then there's no reason they can't have it.
Yeah.
Because you don't care either way, so because it doesn't affect you, because you're in the position of privilege. And I mean, we do get some examples of games with females, and I mean, hell, even Assassin's Creed, yes, it had a single game with a female main character.
That wasn't advertised, and that was only on one little...
It was originally on PSP or Vita, I don't remember which, and then it launched on PC, on Steam, like months later, and again, no advertising, no marketing, it was just there. Hey, we released a PC HD version. And that was Assassin's Creed Liberation. That was it. That was it. And actually, I'm 99% sure half of the cost, like, there were a couple costumes for it where you were basically like a harlot and you seduce people to sneak past as your assassin maneuvers. And so that's just, I mean, sure, that was that, whatever. But
I don't remember. I played a demo of that game, or just like a little bit of it. I don't remember exactly what it was. But I don't remember seeing any of that. But from what I saw, that character was pretty awesome. I mean, we played a black female, and she was realistic and she was likable, and honestly, I connected to her much better than I connected to any of the white male characters in the other Assassin's Creed games. So I think, to me, they really proved that they can do that. They proved that it is possible.
Right.
So why isn't it possible now?
And then, it's always weird when games get it halfway, and this is kind of gonna teeter into what's probably gonna be our last point about like forcing it, like Vespatine talked about, because nothing kills me more than seeing like pictures from textbooks or seeing commercials, and it's like, okay, count the token white guy, Asian guy, black guy, and female. Whoa. Yeah, how much were you paid because of your race to be in this commercial? What, like, sure, whatever. And then there's so many games that I feel get it halfway, maybe. Like, think about whatever to all the costume stuff in the most recent one. But the main character of Final Fantasy 13 is a female. Actually, the main, like, 3 characters are all female. But there's only one black guy. Like, in the entire universe of the game, it would seem. That's kind of weird. There's just one. Where did he come from, if you're going to make it that point? Like, where the hell did you find this guy? But at the same time, how do you balance between that and not forcing it? Because again, I I would rather play, which I 100% disclaimer, that's because I'm a privileged white guy and it doesn't matter to me, but I would much rather play just typical white character cast with no, minorities or inclusion or open-mindedness than, look, suddenly the Asian guy and the black lady and, like just forcing it in there like Borderlands 2 style, like this is our minority 1, minority 2, minority 3. So, but the issue will be finding a balance for that, and I would honestly say that has to come in a mindset of you should by default be thinking of people from different universes, universes, different diverse people, but if that isn't happening, how do you fix that without just forcing it?
Well, I'm going to be critical of you here for a moment, just to say, how do you feel that they're forcing it? Do you feel that they're forcing it because of your privileged position, or are they really just forcing it? I mean, like you were talking about with textbooks and stuff, you see your token black people or Asians or whatever on there, but in video games, why is it unbelievable that the character that they just showed you is black?
It's not so much about the character so much as they just kind of throw them together as a mix. In a game,
oh, so it's just this random group, like
right,
the entire universe
like,
is white, and then it's just this random group of...
It's literally like the textbook photo. Like, these people have absolutely no reason. Like, you're not gonna go into a group and find a white woman or an Asian woman, a black guy, an Asian guy, and a white guy. Like, sure, those all people interact freely, whatever. You're not gonna find that 4 or 5 person group like that. That's not how the universe works. That's not realistic. That's not natural. It's totally natural for them to whatever, but it's not natural for them to just be there for the sake of being there. And so, again, like my Hawaiian, Somalian, whatever he is, dude from... Somalia is not the word, the place I was looking for. Whatever. The Hawaiian dude from Tomb Raider. It's like, oh, you couldn't risk having another white guy here, so you just came up with this generic, cliche, spiritual Hawaiian dude who feels for the island, but his role is completely insignificant to the story. You just needed a character and couldn't have him just be a generic white person because you already had too many of them.
Well, then that comes from the fact that the entire universe is already filled with white people. Like,
right.
So if you just say, forget it, I'm not going to include this minority race here because it's going to be forced, why not include them in the rest of the universe?
Right. And okay, I just, and I guess the stereotypes play heavily into that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember much about the actual, because you don't really interact with them, but the people characters you interact with in Left 4 Dead. But while that's clearly an example of that textbook photo, it's like, okay, we have 4 characters. Let's make sure each one of them are different, diverse. We'll have 2 white people and 2 black people. Let's go. But it's at least a bit more natural, and I'm pretty sure you do encounter diverse people in the world, and then there's zombies, of course, and so it really doesn't matter. It just, I feel like that's a bit more polished example, because they have literally the textbook, they have 4 people to work with on a movie poster, they gotta split them up, and it flows kind of well.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I really just wish they'd use some random number generator to figure out, okay, male, female, trans female, like any of the gender spectrum. Alright, let's figure out their sexuality, random sexuality. Let's figure out their race, random race. Maybe see if they have some sort of, like, disabilities there.
Yeah.
It just seems... and it would make it more interesting to me.
And now, time for this week's question.
Boxers or briefs?
In the wake of Steam Greenlight in early access, what do you think about paying full price for unfinished games and games that will never finish? If you've not actually bought an early access or Greenlight game, what's your outsider take on it? There's a lot of debate going around about whether it's actually acceptable given the fact that games that are completely unfinished and in many cases not even playable are being advertised as new releases and full games on Steam and being sold for as high as $50 for an alpha that has 2 functions and pixelated graphics that aren't ready yet. I'm interested to see what you all think. I've encountered a lot of this recently with some of the indie games that I have been sent for review and the like, and it's just kind of got it on my mind. So I'm interested to see. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Sorry this was a bit longer episode than usual. Quite a bit, but that's alright. Important topics require important time. Long time. Words. And we will see you all next week. Thank you for watching. Ipos and Chew.
Bye-bye.